exciting.
Yes.
So just thinking about that again, every time I speak to you, I always just have that thought like, wow, that's so much to manage, so much details, birthdays, training, everybody has a different schedule. And it's just tying into our conversation again about, and then you have your own life to manage, and then you have your relationship and all these things. And it just always brings that thought to me again, like how do you really get it done? And that's a lot of what our conversations are about, how do persons make it happen? So I'm going to jump right in. I'm seeing your planner in the back, and I'm really excited to get into it. I want to go like really deep and detailed into it when we get to that point.
Mhm.
But just a little bit more about you and your mindset and some context before we get into the planner. In one of I read through several of your blog posts, and in one of your blogs, you said you asked persons how they define success. I think we know now that that's subjective and it looks different for everyone.
Mhm.
But how do you personally define success?
Well, for me, I have come to understand that success really is not possible if it's not twofold. So when I say that success should never be in terms of like me, myself, and I, it should always have an effect on at least one other person. I think that's the ultimate level of success. Success is really present when not only yourself get to do what you love to do each day, but also to have an effect on someone else that would also make their life or improve their life in some measure, some way. So I think that is the ultimate, level of success when it not only changes your life, but your life also changes the lives of others. So I think that's what we all should be striving towards, right? Not only happiness for me, I did this, I went here. How can you make that life or show the steps on how someone else can live that life as well, or do what they want to do, or also affect the lives of others as well. So I think that is my definition of success. It must be twofold.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting that you said that because I'm just thinking about this last year and I'm thinking about um, what happened in 2020. And I think it brought a bit of balance to persons in terms of what you're saying, where I think for a while, the narrative has been so much on the individual and being independent and being self-sufficient and doing everything for yourself, which is part of the equation. And that's very important. And I think what you're saying is very correct. Unless you focus on yourself first and get yourself in order, you can't really effect change or assist anyone. But I think last year we really came into a level of balance in terms of understanding that we are so interconnected and we are independent, we are interdependent, and as a human race, as a human collective, everything affects everything else and everyone affects everyone else, and it's about community and it's one human race. So for me, that's where my mind went when you said it's twofold and it has to impact those around you positively as well. And talking about that, I am curious to know how 2020 was for you. I know you launched your, I think it's your first physical product in a year that I think was very challenging for so many persons. So I feel like, I feel like it's like, that like the lotus flower where there's all this stuff going on, but something beautiful is emerging. That's how I see it when Like I would see your pictures and everything that emerged last year. So how would you say last year was for you, and how have you grown?
Wow. So last year, as we all know, for everyone, it was quite an eventful year. For me, I think I was quite surprised because of, many the doom and gloom that, started to come into a person's minds when, this pandemic really started to show its colors, and when the so-called big businesses started going out of business. So just to backtrack, as we said, success is really twofold. So those big businesses that were what we would deem successful, that were, when they were successful, affecting the lives of others. When they closed, look at how many persons, went on the breadline, did not know what they would do next, didn't have a job, and all of that. So maintaining that momentum and that level of success is so important. And also innovating is so important, always being on the top, where trends and thinking outside of the box when something isn't working is so important. So as I say that, for me, that is what I had to do in 2020. 2019 was a year that I really did a lot of investment in myself, in my personal development, in my knowledge and reading, in, just changing that mindset and becoming stronger. So when 2020 came, I did not find myself behind or trying to catch up, right? I had a plan that I, was going to follow for 2020, because 2019 was a year that really was more profitable for one of my businesses, which is the tourism business. And also for another business that was like dead. If you always hear me talk about that business that I had to close, that was the business that came to be the emergent business for me in 2020. And that is so, it's always mind blowing to me, because, when you think that something that, cause you pain, cause you hurt, cause your life to be in a certain place, when you think that that could be the thing, if you start thinking differently or applying different principles to really turn around, to really support you in a season that, is dry, is dead, it could be considered famine, that is a real powerful thing. And just as I said, thinking outside of the box and, looking at those innovative ways of being present and serving that ideal client or that audience that you say you want to serve, it's really powerful. So my procurement business, that's with my husband, because of the pandemic, it's a, we source things, and we source hard to find items for corporations, for government agencies and stuff like that. And because of the pandemic, we know so many things went scarce, right? So, you couldn't find hand sanitizer, you couldn't find masks, you couldn't find safety gear, nothing was becoming available. And because of my years in procurement experience, I was able now to bring that back to the forefront, right? Like, that is what we did. That's what we did for our audience way back before the business closed, right? So we were able to bring that back and to make these items available for our clients who could not find those items. And the demand came so much, right? And because 2019, we prepared for 2020, we were able to have reserves that we could have gotten those items, had the cash flow to get those items, so that when the profit came, we could reinvest it in the business. So 2020 was like the best year because we had that foundation and were preparing from the years before. In terms
Right.
of my coaching business, I had to kind of make some changes. I realized that it was not a time for me to go silent, even though I really wanted to. I really was enjoying the time with the family, cooking every day and being at home and watching TVs. Those are things that I did not have the time to do years before. And, I started enjoying that and I really wanted to go silent, but I realized that I had to show up for the people who, may not, who are looking for something that they can make that next step or what they should do next, So I created a coaching program surrounding that and so some mom entrepreneurs. But I also realized, just as I said, in keeping up with that trend, that physical products were on the rise. So, for many years, I wanted to do a planner, but I just, didn't really put much effort into it. I tried doing one myself. It took me many months and it didn't look the way I wanted it to. So I said, okay, now is the time for me to get this done. And I already knew what I wanted, but I didn't think that it would be like this amazing. So yeah, so 2020 was a great, great year for me.
So then anyway, when I get to that question, I'll ask. So I think the key thing that you're saying is because you had your plan in motion for some time before 2020 came around, the disruption would not have been that. Yes, there would have been issues, but because you had done so much planning and there was that momentum that you were able to kind of still achieve certain things for that year.
Yes, in a nutshell.
So I want to look back a little bit further than 2020 in terms of when we had our interview last year and your entire entrepreneurship journey and when you started. I know you said from a very young age you wanted to be an entrepreneur, and looking at how far you've come now in terms of the level of impact that you have on persons, and how you help them. How would you say your journey has been? How would you say you've grown from then to now?
I think resilience has a lot to do with that because, as I said before, I really, I could have given up in 2020, in that last year. I could have laid back and, just let things be. But because I have a higher level of resilience, I knew that I could not do that. So in a year where, most persons would have been, reserving their funds, reserving their resources, not trying to do too much, I realized that that was the time for me to really take that time to beef up on certain things, to invest in certain areas, to show up in certain areas. So if you would notice from, the last interview to now, I have done a lot where personal branding is concerned, defining my message, knowing who I serve and really making myself more of an authority in my area. So that was my main focus in 2020. Before 2020, 2019, I said that 2020 was a year that I was going to focus on being, seen internationally. That was supposed to be my focus for 2020. But the way things shifted, I realized that I had to go back and really develop myself more so that when the world opens back out again, that I would have had that footprint right? That made that trek, seeing this, I went here, I went there, to have those footprints remaining there so that if you go back, you would see. So, 2020 was really a year for doing that, going back and laying that foundation. So, when we open again, that I would really, really be ready. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful because I was going full speed ahead. We know COVID has stopped most of us in our tracks, and I think for good reason as well. We all slowed down and started to look at things differently, and we realized that what we deemed was important in our next step, it really wasn't that important, and that we can divert, we can make different decisions that can still lead us to our goal, but through a different route because of what is happening globally.